Hi there, I'm Danny Flexen and welcome to the latest edition of SecondsOut FLEXpectations. We're here every Thursday, 4:30pm, to look ahead to what's coming in the world of boxing, of course. And this week I thought I'd look into what could be the biggest fight that's left in 2020. And obviously with the COVID-19 pandemic, things are being shuffled around, moved back. Fighters are wanting to come back with perhaps slightly easier fights than were first planned, rather than go from relative inactivity and straight into a massive fight. So it's worth looking at what we might see in the rest of the year. And I know I did this before, but things have obviously evolved since then. Situations changed. I know in the UK, the British Boxing Board of Control have just issued some guidance around sparring. That's now going to be allowed, although with some restrictions added to it. You can find those online, I would imagine, but quite a lot of restrictions. And I don't expect many of them to be followed or any realistic way of those rules or guidance being enforced. But that aside, we are seeing boxing back now. There's going to be UK fighters on Al Siesta's Cold Wars show in July. And we expect to see Frank Warren back mid-July with some shows from BT Studios and Eddie Hearn towards the end of July from Matchroom HQ. In the US, they've already kicked off, obviously top ranked shows at the moment every Tuesday and Thursday. There'll be one tonight, of course, featuring Jose Pedraza in the main event, against Mikel Lapierre. So we'll look forward to that. So as boxing kind of starts to get back, I've seen some criticism already with people saying, well, these top ranked shows, they're not great. Some of that's dimmed somewhat since Mike Planier won an upset decision over Josh Greer Jr., showing that maybe the matchmaking isn't as bad as people are making out. But it's hard to blame fighters for wanting slightly easier fights coming from a long layoff, even though everyone's on a level playing field. No one wants to take a career-limiting defeat that could be avoided. So what's going to be the really big fights left in 2020? Well, Canelo is usually in the biggest fights of the year. He takes those May and September dates for the most part. Obviously fought Sergei Kovalev later than that last year. And a lot's been talked about his next fight. Will it be Billy Joe Saunders? Will it be a third fight against Triple G, who until recently seemed still keen to accommodate his mandatory middleweight challenger, Kareem Zuremeta? Canelo, if he does fight in September, I know Golden Boy are looking into options of him fighting behind closed doors. Obviously a huge TV attraction, massive superstar, but the live gate would harm them. He's used to getting a lot of revenue from those live gates. But if he does decide to fight again this year, I imagine it'll only be once. And whether it's behind closed doors or not, surely it'll be a huge fight. Perhaps against Billy Joe Saunders. I know a lot of UK fans would like to see that. So that could end up being the biggest fight of the year if it happens. You've obviously got a fight already in the books, the third fight between Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder. Already agreed. They did have a date that's been moved couple of times now, and the latest I heard from Bob Arum when I interviewed him last week, an interview you can see on the channel, he said they're looking at the week before Christmas in December. Obviously Christmas hasn't moved, not yet anyway. Christmas in the week before Christmas, and they were looking at 3 different locations, including Australia, which seems to be rather an outsider. Could still happen, but the fact that they've already moved it back several times and they're now looking at but haven't confirmed the week before Christmas suggests it wouldn't really take much to move it into 2021. So I'm kind of almost ready to rule that out as the biggest fight remaining this year. Matchroom are still keen to get Anthony Joshua out before the end of the year against Kubrat Pulev, mandatory defence, but how feasible that is without a live crowd, or even as stuff continues to evolve with a reduced size live crowd with social distancing enforced, remains to be seen. I mean, you put Joshua in, 60,000 seat stadium and fill it to, a fifth capacity. What's that, 12,000? Quick maths there. Hope you're impressed if it's right. So 12,000 for a Joshua fight. It's not going to do the money. What are they going to have to pay to get the venue? Will venues be accommodating in terms of reducing their higher fees because of the ongoing problems and just attracting events that otherwise might leave the venues dormant? We'll have to wait and see. Obviously, there's a lot of other sports wanting to use venues to fulfill their schedules before the end of their seasons as well. So that needs to be taken into account. And even if all that comes to fruition, how big a fight is Joshua Pulev? The vast majority of people, Bob Arum aside, and even he, I'm not sure, takes himself completely seriously about this. Believe that Joshua's going to get the job done relatively comfortably. So we can wait and see on that one. So it still looks like Canelo as the front runner. Vasyl Lomachenko against Teofimo Lopez, certainly amongst the hardcore boxing community. Fight that I'm most looking forward to after lockdown. Great fight, two champions unifying, not obviously undisputed because Loma is now WBC franchise champion, so we can't say it's undisputed, but still a really, really intriguing fight. Lopez said initially he didn't want to fight with no crowd. Bob Arum came back and said, well, for fighters that say that, it might mean sitting on the bench for the rest of the year. I think things may have changed on that score since, but also I think fans will start being allowed back into venues, perhaps in September. So maybe we can see that fight in the autumn. That's not a fight where they necessarily need 20, 30,000 people in the venue. So perhaps we can see a big venue with social distancing in place, and that can finally come off. And that could be perhaps the biggest fight in what's left of this year. Perhaps it'll be that. There's also Noira Nui against John Real Casimero, another unification contest, and one that's very, very intriguing, especially after Casimero destroyed Zolani Tete rather unexpectedly last year. And that one already had a date, same with Loma against Lopez, that then had to be moved back, so we wait to see exactly what happens with that. I don't think we'll see any World Boxing Super Series Season 3, easy for me to say, fights this year. From what Calisauland said, it will probably start next year now. But we do still have the Cruiserweight final to come between Maris Bridis and Uniel Dorticos, which you would hope will get in before the end of the year. But again, in terms of crossover appeal, probably not the biggest fight left in this year. So I don't mean to sound kind of glum and that there's not a lot to look forward to. And there is, especially for the boxing hardcore fans who would make up the majority of this audience, I would hope. But let me know what you think is going to be the biggest fight that can and will be made before the end of 2020. You've heard what I think, but I want to know what you think. Let me know. I'll respond to some of the comments below. There's probably some glaring ones that I haven't even mentioned, which, you know, is always a bit of a journalistic curse and you kind of kick yourself later on. But put the comments. Happy to kick myself. Let me know what you think. I'll be back on Monday for Reflections at 4:30 p.m, of course. And then next Thursday, same time for the next FLEXpectations. Always a pleasure, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Cheers.